Empathetic communication, essentially it's about being human. Listen actively, ask better questions, show you genuinely care. You can build trust, uncover real drivers behind decisions, and ultimately it's going to make your sales conversations more meaningful, more effective.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes.
And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. Today, and for the next 7 episodes, they're actually going to be solos. So just me, because I want to talk you through the ethical model. So the ethical model is what's at the core of my book, Ethical Selling. And I want to break these elements down in short, so 10, 15-minute episodes that you can get a bit of an understanding as to what they're all about. So in this first episode, we're going to talk about empathetic communication. So essentially the E from ethical. So why does Why does empathetic communication matter so much in sales? Well, empathy isn't just nice to have, it's essential. At its core, empathetic communication is about understanding your customers on a deeper level, their needs, their challenges, their emotions. As salespeople, it's our job to listen first and sell second. So when you demonstrate genuine care and curiosity, customers open up, and that's when we can begin to build trust. So you can consider this almost like being a detective of emotions. I think I heard that somewhere, and something that I borrowed because I quite like. So in other words, you're not just hearing words, you're listening for feelings, you're observing body language, you're identifying those soft facts, so fears, desires, motivations, aspirations, those things that drive action. And salespeople were great at listening to the hard facts, so numbers, dates, facts and figures, but really it's the soft facts that's going to give us probably more clues into how we can keep the sale moving forward. There's an expression, isn't there, which is emotion drives motion. So when we think about empathetic communication, what does that actually look like in practice? So I'm going to give a couple of ideas here. So one of them is active listening. And so this means truly focusing in on the customer. What are they saying? How are they saying it? Probably more so even what they're not saying. Is that something we might want to try to get to and think about, what are those things that they might be hiding or just not having actually thought about yet? Our job as salespeople is to help people think. So one of the things to talk about in the book, I've talked about in all my books, is the 2-to-1 communication ratio. Yeah, it's been around for ages, this one's older than the hills. So 2-to-1, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that proportion. So listen twice as much as you talk. Yeah, real kind of rule of thumb. When I'm training, I tend to take this and move it on a little bit further and say, look, as well as 2 ears, you've got 2 eyes. So with 2 eyes, you can look at people, you can read the body language, read their expressions, even sort of read the environment. Particularly people who are working in a customer's office, on site, you'll pick up lots and lots of elements. And then I will take this and turn it into sort of 2 feet. So you can put your 2 feet in their shoes, and putting your feet in their shoes is one of the ways in which we often describe empathy. That's one of the ways in which we can really think about how to be more empathetic in communication. And look, I've kind of already alluded to this. We can ask meaningful questions. When we talk about questioning skills in training, lots of people will say, oh yeah, open questions, closed questions. And I'll say, yeah, very good. Open questions, what, why, when, where, who, how. Yeah, Rudyard Kipling's 6 serving men. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names were what and where and why and when and how and who. So they give you a variable response. We want to ask stuff like that. Yes, no answers is a closed question, which we sometimes need. We want to get confirmation. But we can also ask probing questions, so questions which go a little deeper. I often talk about TED, so tell me, explain, describe. They're quite good ways of doing that. Hypothetical questions. So if you had a blank sheet of paper, if you were the big boss, if you were starting from scratch, those kind of things. So they break people out of a box they might be stuck in. You might want to ask summary questions. So summarize what it is that people are saying, so that they can recognize what it is as much as you're checking your own understanding. Sometimes just being quiet, silence, is a good way of doing that. And then just using your body language, showing that you're listening. So recognizing that someone's talking and you're paying attention. These are great ways of asking questions, and good salespeople can take it up a level. They can take it up a level by asking high gain questions. So a high gain question is a very thoughtful question. It's one that brings insight into the equation. So a perspective, something interesting that you're going to shine a light on to help people get a different view of what it is that we're discussing. And of course, there's the questioning models. So something like SPIN. SPIN has been around for a long time, since kind of early 90s. Situation, problem, implication, need, payoff. These questions which are designed to help you and the customer understand need. And basically, the difference between where somebody is now and where they want to be. We can definitely use those most effectively. So questions, real important part of empathetic communication. So I've mentioned this already as a kind of question, but just reflecting back, summarizing, so repeating key points, customer's own words, showing you're listening, double checking that you're understanding. And again, I mentioned that in the two I's, decode nonverbal cues. So people's body language, and we could talk about the tone of voice as well. The expressions, facial expression. There's usually lots and lots going on in someone's face. Reading and understanding these unspoken cues and responding appropriately makes a lot of sense. Look, I've given a little story of kind of how this works. I worked with somebody a little while back, and he used to focus pretty much entirely on hard facts. So features, timelines, specifications. The guy's an engineer, so it often happens. Technically brilliant, but often found it difficult to connect with customers. Other engineers, probably wasn't too bad. But when people in different parts of the organisation got involved, he'd often stall because he'd miss on the soft facts, so that the worries, the hopes, the bigger business goals. We worked to help him understand the kind of power of active listening, asking those questions. And that's when stuff changed. He'd have a habit of jumping in and kind of immediately going to solution mode. But when he started asking things like, what's really driving this change? How is this going to make a difference? Why is this going to be so important to you? Again, it just got more information, and it made more sense to the people that he was working with. And then one of the things we talk about quite a lot is shifting from being a salesperson to a more trusted partner. He certainly made those steps. So some of the tips, what we do, let me kind of skim through some of these. I've talked about open-ended questions: what, why, when, where, who, how. Tell me more, explain, describe. The TED questions to probe. Those sort of things will help us have better conversations. Now we can also reflect feelings. Now, for instance, if we think someone might be feeling frustrated, we might be able to put that back. Now, so it sounds like it's been something quite challenging for you. So we're validating their experience. We're making sure that we understand it, but helping them recognize that we do. I talked about soft facts. So go beyond data, go beyond deadlines, get into the emotions. What are their concerns? What keeps them up at night? And that's a terrible question. I would never, ever recommend that somebody asks that. But really, if you can kind of get into those worries and the things that if we can help them sort them out, we will be in a better position. Preparation is key. I'd always encourage people to prepare before calls, prepare before meetings, research their background, the company. What challenges do you think they're facing? So this is where we generate that insight. This is where we can ask questions that show we care, that show we're in a position to be able to do something. It's always been the case, but now more than ever, it's easier to do that. There's a separate podcast really, but if you're not using artificial intelligence to understand kind of what's going on in the customer's world, you're missing a massive trick. There's ways in which you can ask the AI, ChatGPT, whatever your favorite version is, to get these insights, so you can go very well prepared to be asking great stuff. And ultimately, shut up. Shut up. Stop talking. Silence is powerful. Not only will people fill the vacuum, it can be a bit uncomfortable, but we've got to give people space to think. If you've asked a really good question, then someone is going to need to take time to work out what that response is. I'll encourage people to look at your customers' eyes when you're asking them things, because if they're moving around, they're going up, they're going sideways, they're going down, they're probably accessing different bits of information. So that's certainly something that you can do. So really, okay, let's wrap up. I said I'd keep these episodes pretty short. Empathetic communication, essentially, it's about being human. Listen actively, ask better questions, show you genuinely care. You can build trust, uncover real drivers behind decisions, and ultimately, it's going to make your sales conversations more meaningful, more effective. So, little challenge. I'm going to finish all these with a bit of a challenge for you. Next sales meeting, practice 2-to-1 communication ratio. Set yourself that goal of listening twice as much as you're talking. Now whether you're using some kind of cool conversational intelligence that you can look at the stats later, or just have a feeling of whether you did that or not, it's something that I'm going to challenge you to do. And then I'm going to ask you to ask one extra open question: what, why, when, where, who, how, to go deeper into customer needs. So it can even be a TED, tell me, explain, describe. Yeah. Do these couple of things and you'll see a difference that it makes. Yeah. So sometimes selling and getting better at sales is quite simple. So yeah, two simple little challenges. So yeah, thank you for tuning into sales today. In the next episode, I told you we're going to do this little mini series. We'll go into the next part of the ethical model, which is all about transparency and integrity. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it, leave a review, subscribe, all the good stuff that you want to be doing for a podcast. Buy the book if you want to get into more detail. But certainly, until next time, keep yourself selling ethically.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.